I am here today with Kathleen McGarry from Colorado AccuCare, and she is based out of Boulder. I have been working with Kathleen for not that long, about 6 or 7 weeks now, and she was brought to me by my tribe of fantastic women that are deep divers and that are really, really interested in knowing more about the mind, body, spirit connection. And Kathleen is someone that is teaching me a tremendous amount about that. And most of that is diving into the chakra system. So for me, the chakra system is something, I'm a yogi. I have been, in the world of yoga for about 15 years, and it's something that's always been very interesting to me. And it's also been a little bit elusive, like just a little bit out of reach. And the purpose of this interview and this call really is, selfishly for me to get some more information from Kathleen, and I'm so honored that you are here. Thank you so much. And just to get an overview of the chakra system as a whole, maybe, kind of the etiology, like the background behind the chakra system, I think would be a great way to start, just in terms of introducing the background of it and maybe how you use it, how you came to be curious about it and use it in your work with clients.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you. So, as many people know, this is like on a lot of people's minds, like, oh, what is this? And, it's becoming more mainstream, and more and more people are like, I want to clear my chakras, so I feel like it's important for people to know what the interface is between the body, the mind, and the emotions.
Yes.
And so I have a diagram here. It's actually a tapestry. It looks more, it has a kind of iridescence to it, 'cause it's over the window here. But basically what I've discovered, I've been working with the chakras for about 20 years. First on myself, studying it and everything, and then for 10 years professionally working with it as a body worker. And I started out learning acupressure, which is the Chinese meridian system. And I realized, let me show another just very simple drawing here.
Great.
This is the Chinese meridian system. Can you see that? Very kind of basic points and rivers. So docking stations and rivers. And this all connects energetically to the etheric body. So beyond the physical, there are, energetic connections to the higher self and so forth, if you take it to a spiritual level. So, but just from a basic emotional and physical level,
yes,
the chakra system really mirrors the developmental stages of the human. And this was something that Caroline Myss addressed in her 7 stages of healing. She was somebody that I really enjoyed learning from. And then when I was doing my bodywork training in California almost 10 years ago, when I started working with the chakra system, I literally could sense stuck emotions. I was being trained to help do emotional release through the Chinese system. So there are actual points on the body that release grief or anger or sadness or worry. There's different ways to kind of calm and regulate, okay? So that was fascinating enough to me that I could help somebody with my hands that way.
Yes.
Really kind of, it's like a release valve, And so that was enough in and of itself, but then I started palpating, which means to just feel the energy. Chiropractors palpate us for tension and bones that are out, but on an energetic level, it's more very kind of like a sensitivity. If you're tactile, you can feel it. And I could actually then begin to see stuff. It was like goo, okay? A lot of people see stuff in the energy auric field. I see it more in the field, in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned was I applied the Chinese principle of clearing the same way you would clear a point with a needle or your hand. I applied it to the chakra system, and people started feeling better. And so I kind of developed a system of like, well, I'm going to just kind of work with it in a developmental way. We have 7 chakras in the body. And in many esoteric teachings, there are another 14 all the way to 21 that we can access in this realm, okay? The 14 chakra system is really where the enlightened yogis reach. It's a union with God when you can really connect to the top, the 14th and beyond. For our purposes as humans, we're really working with the 7th, maybe the 8th and ninth, which connects us to the higher self outside the body. 9th connects us more to our guides and so forth. It's about 8 inches up. But when we're working with our own emotional system, we're talking about stages of development. The root chakra, where we really sit, lotus position, really root in the sits bones and the tailbone, is the root chakra. And so that often relates to a sense of security, a sense of belonging and trust. Mm-hmm. All of the things that we resolve in the early months of attachment.
Okay.
So I've had this epiphany, which is, I'm sure, not unique, because a lot of people have discovered this already, that if you can really work to create that sense of security and safety at the very base chakra, the rest of the chakras kind of come online. Mm-hmm. But in a nutshell, the root chakra is about feeling safe and secure, feeling structure, feeling a sense of routine, and a sense of stability. It's like the foundation of the energy field. A tight root chakra is somebody who's running a lot of rigidity, right? Who like lives by their lists and their rules and their clipboard. So that's like the chakra's too tight. So we have to work to balance it. Someone who has a really loose root chakra, their desk is a mess. They can't balance the checkbook. They lost their keys and they can't, So that's just an example of some kinds of imbalances that can show up. So second chakra relates more to sexuality, identity development. So 2 years old. Okay, we're talking early infancy here, 0 to 6 months, up to about 18 months. Second chakra is more the 2 to 3 year old. Developing differentiation, identity, but also needing to look over the shoulder and make sure mom is still there if we differentiate. So this is where a lot of codependency can show up in adults. If we didn't have good separation and differentiation from mom, a lot of us have second chakra issues. And this can turn into a lack of creativity, a conforming energy that can also be in the root. But second chakra can relate to sense of identity that is distorted or not fully developed if mom wouldn't let you go, or if mom was super fearful, or you had some neglect in your childhood, then that could show up as a little bit of recklessness, and almost like just leaky creativity and sexual energy. So we want to go for a nice balance of a sense of I am creative, I am relational, and I'm grounded. So coming back to that root chakra over and over again. Third chakra is about power. And so if you move that into this developmental stage, it's like ages 3 to 7. School age child, learning to differentiate, but also learning to actualize in the world, learning to, I've got some skills. I'm talented. I know how to kick a ball. I know how to make my A's. I can do my times tables. Those are kinds of like the early childhood development of power, learning that I have some capabilities in the world. Again, if we're securely attached and we have a nice sense of identity and differentiation, school is a breeze, right? If you don't have some of those things, school can be torturous. And so we all know what that's about. The fourth chakra is the beautiful element of love. Fourth chakra is very beautiful, radiant light. And this is where we begin to become relational more in the teenage years, okay? So 8 to 14. And so again, if we're feeling we have a good foundation in childhood and a good sense of identity and a sense of our own individuated power, then relationships become a shared, you're curious, I'm curious about you, tell me about you, let's share what we know and who we are. So it's a beautiful, the heart is complex.
I imagine.
As you can imagine. But the heart chakra is a beautiful place to start when you're doing transformative energy work. And I can explain more about that. So I spend a lot of time with my clients with these lower four, the heart and the power, identity, and structure. Okay. The throat chakra, which relates to late teenage years, early adulthood, is about expression and self actualization. There's a real connection between will and power. So when we talk about aligning ourselves and attuning the ego in some of the traditions, like in Buddhism and Sufism and Taoism, what they're talking about is really aligning the expression of will and power, being able to express in an attuned way. But that's early adulthood. Later adulthood, we're getting up to full-on actualization, awakening of the third eye in the center of the head, which is about wisdom and discernment. Oftentimes clairvoyance is awakened when you begin to play with the third eye. And then full actualization is in the crown. So it's a really fun progression. And so oftentimes when we're working with this system, people will show up with relational issues. They'll show up with, physical issues. Often I talk about in my video on my website, if there are imbalances in the second or first chakra, you'll get UTIs, you'll get women with polyps or whatever, fibroids, hip issues in the root chakra, or lower back. If someone comes in, oh, I've got headaches, oh, I have a thyroid. It's like lots of women with thyroid issues have so much stuff that they haven't expressed in their throats. So, and often that shows up around menopause, but it's because they've been stuffing their feelings and their words for a lifetime. You get that moving again, and you take the right, herbs and supplements, man, that comes right online usually. So that's kind of it in an overview. And there, I guess I should say, just keep it real. I love the fact that, when people are looking at this after yoga, and there's lots of yoga postures to open all these chakras, and it's wonderful, you're also benefiting the glandular system. So the root chakra, because it relates so much to survival and feeling safe, is very much related to the adrenal system. And the second chakra, of course, relates to the gonads and the ovarian system.
Okay.
And the third chakra relates to the stomach and the spleen, pancreas. So, if you've had a bad day at work and someone has really socked you in the stomach, your boss criticized you or whatever, and you feel it, and then the next thing you know, you have a stomach ache.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's usually a third chakra. There's a power issue, and it's affecting your, the way you take things into your, suddenly there's not a real safe, it doesn't feel safe to digest or take in. So that might feel tight. Heart chakra relates to the thymus gland, which is a dormant gland normally, but in the process of working with the light body, which is a class that I teach, we actually awaken the etheric thymus gland, which is called the sacred heart, and it activates more, not fully, but brings online the thymus gland for the use of the wonderful immune system properties that it brings. Tapping the thymus, you've probably heard about. So it's in the etheric body, it brings in some of the highest vibrations into the body. It's really where the soul anchors in the body. Okay?
And would you say a little bit more about the etheric body? Like, what does that mean when you say that?
Yeah. Well, let me finish with the glands.
Great.
So it's really rooted in the body, and happy to answer that. So the throat chakra relates to the thyroid, as we already talked about. The crown chakra, or third eye, relates to the pineal, and the crown chakra relates, pituitary, and the pineal is the crown. And those two are constantly, when you're working with the upper chakras and working with a lot of meditation, the pineal and the pituitary and the thymus work together to kind of, when, those yogis that live for 200 years, they're playing with all kinds of energies between that thymus gland and their pineal. And the pineal in ancient times was considered like the way, if you activated it and kept it juicy, is a way to kind of live forever. It changes the whole chemistry of the body. So the etheric body, in answer to your question, Sarah, is is the field of energy that is, so we have, let's start from the ground up. We've got our physical body, right? And then there is the emotional body and the mental body, which are, they're real energetics that are just off the physical. Oftentimes they're stuck emotions in the physical. So as we talked about, the, you know, tummy ache after the boss, whatever, cramps in the belly. And then the etheric body is really the chakra system. It's the energetic sort of plexus or interface between the physical, mental, emotional, and then the light body, which is part of a whole 9-body system that extends into the soul. So there's different layers that go beyond the etheric into layers of the soul and the oversoul as we get into the 14 chakra system. But for our purposes, etheric just means the energy off of the body, maybe that much. There's some field, you know, energetically in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. And in your experience as a body worker and someone that works with energy and with the chakra system, what's the best way to come at a client that comes to you saying, maybe they're not super in touch with the chakra system, with their energy system, and they know that they've got, so for instance, I'll use myself as an example. I was having a physiological response that I now understand was very much due to my emotional and my energetic body trying to give me a signal, right? But I thought that I had, it wasn't digestive issues. I just had a real tightness in my abdomen.
Okay.
And so let's say, and this was a couple of years ago, like, let's say someone comes to you and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I've heard that you do great work. This is happening in my body. How do you go at that when you have all these different modalities that you utilize?
That's a really good question. So what I have been coming up with in a very concrete way is it really depends on the client and how deeply they want to go kind of into the story of their pain. Some people come in and have never done any therapy and just really want to feel better, in which case I would work with that client more at the physical level, working with breath, working with some stretching, working with some just, you know, me holding certain points to release the tension in the abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
That would be sort of a phase 1 or stage 1, like entry point.
Mm-hmm.
But like someone like you who's done a ton of work and really wanted to dig a little bit deeper, the kind of steps I would take with that would be to do a really thorough intake and get a feel for like what's going on in your life, you know, what recently could have triggered this, or when did you first, you know, do some inquiry and investigation, and kind of try to get at some of the root cause from your perspective. And then I begin right away to do 2 things. One is to build a container, and the other is to teach the tools and give homework, so that I'm not getting into a role of just being a janitor and a fixer, so to speak. Because that is how, you know, we do that with doctors and all of our healers. We get into this pattern. I've done it where I don't feel well and I want them to fix me. And I can make someone feel, I can help someone feel better even if they just want a massage and some acupressure. But if you don't get to the underlying belief and emotional thought form, the thought and the belief the thought and the emotion that go together, that pattern is going to get recreated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if someone's really into changing those patterns, that's a longer term commitment to me.
Right.
So what I do is we work to build a really safe container. And I do that with visualization. I do that with activation of some energy power field around them. So because I don't want just emotions splattered everywhere and them not being able to hold their container. And a lot depends on the support system of the person too. But we'll do some container building. I'll teach them some energy tools. I work with crystals and color, and so I'll teach them some of those techniques. And by the 4th or 5th session, we'll do some clearing, which has to do with visualization and their participation in moving energy out of the body that often has emotional content. By the 6th or 7th session, I know we went a little faster with you, but I knew you were really resourced. We will talk about what it means to be courted and connected to another individual. Oftentimes people will have, especially after a breakup, will have a feeling of like, I can't shake this person, having dreams about this person. I can't stop wanting to pick up the phone, but I don't want anything to do with them. So oftentimes by the 5th or 6th session, we're getting into some meat, okay? We're gonna start looking at what it means to energetically cut the tie, okay? There may be a contract that needs to be rewritten or eliminated. Generally about this period, if I always ask in the beginning if someone has a therapist, and to beyond just doing the massage and general acupressure and release the way I described at that stage 1, if someone wants to do a deep dive with me, if they haven't done therapy, I'm going to ask them to get a good therapist on board, because there's a limit to what I can do in the scope of my practice. And I also really value the input of collaboration, because there may be things that a psychotherapist I know there are things that a psychotherapist is going to see that I can't, and vice versa. And I can put my hands on someone and get the energy going. But I want a therapist often on board to go, you might want to slow that part down, or you might want to investigate this, or so there's just a wonderful opportunity to kind of give the best service possible. So at about the 5th or 6th session, I kind of put everything on pause, do some integration, and make sure the person is resourced to go deeper. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to the work that you do, is because I work on such a place of, so cymatics to me is something that's been very, very interesting. And I almost went into somatic psychology instead of getting a coaching certification, and decided against it. But essentially, for those of you all that are listening, cymatics is the interface between the emotions and the physical body, and how the emotions can manifest, and you can experience your emotions through from a physiological standpoint. And the work that you do takes it to the next level from my standpoint, which is what's happening energetically in this other plane, this other dimension that I can't quite grasp, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to, I've got like my notes over here, I'm taking notes listening to you, and just to know more about this. So one question that I have 2 questions. One is, so if we're looking at the root chakra and we understand, and it makes so much sense to me, right? That's where we're connected to the earth. It's such a sacred place in our bodies, that if that is disrupted, if it's not stable, if it's got the yucky gook in it, so to speak, that you speak of, that the rest of the chakra system is not going to be stable, it's not going to be contained, and it's not going to flow nicely. I guess I just have a question about and we don't need to have any trigger warnings or whatever, right? But what would create a really, can you give some examples of what would make an unstable root chakra, or a root chakra that needs some balancing?
Well, let me start by saying all of us on the planet right now, if we haven't consciously done a whole ton of work, have a shared collective imbalance in the root chakra, okay? Just by virtue of being human at this time, there's a shared collective consciousness that has to do with survival, okay? And we can get into a whole theory about that and where that all came from, and different religions and theories of consciousness and so forth. But the baseline is that we all carry some imbalance in the root chakra if we're not actively meditating and working with fear. So that's why most spiritual practices, if not all, talk about transforming fear with faith, or with belief, or with some opening and surrendering to something bigger than our physicality. Inherent in the physicality is the fight or flight response, which I talked about, which is in the lower chakra, in the root chakra. Okay. So we really are all in this together, which is both a blessing and a curse, right? So we can trigger each other's fears, or we can help each other heal. And so an example, though, I mean, it's a continuum. So an example of an extreme of that might be someone who's agoraphobic and doesn't want to leave the house, or someone who's a hoarder. I mean, those are all root chakra issues, not being able to let go, okay? Somebody who is, you know, very driven around tasks and doesn't have a lot of joy in their life or creativity, you would say is, you know, there's a lot of fear of instability. So there's the compensation in that way.
And trying to control.
Yeah.
Where would that originate? Like, where would that come from? Like, I can see some of those tendencies in myself and people that I know or clients that I work with, but where, you know, like from your experience working with clients, where's that come from?
It's as individual as the person. I mean, usually what I see with somebody like that, I could just pull it out of the air and say, usually someone who has a really tight root chakra grew up in a really chaotic home. Is usually the case, that there's some compensation for feeling like the world is really unsafe. And it started with in my childhood, and especially with I never bonded with my mom. And so I got to hold it down, because if I don't, everything's going to just go to chaos. So
wow.
Yeah. So that's why I say, when I start to work at this level, especially, I usually, like I say, I don't go into the root chakra alone. I really want a therapist on board when we start working with that 0 to 6-month-old energy. The upper chakras are a little lighter, but when you're really talking about where somebody got their essential message about being okay and safe, I want them to be really resourced in order to feel that. But once we get there, it's transformative. I've just seen when people can really reconnect with that very primal infant place and reparent that in their own, if they need to. Some people were securely attached and it's a non-issue. But if someone's not, if they're anxious attached, or if they're avoidant attached and don't want to have any intimacy, or just, you know, push it away, if they can begin to have that sense of security from within, it's transformative. It's really transformative. And talk about creating world peace, one chakra at a time. Like, if we all feel securely attached, imagine how generous we could be, and how much more relaxed there would be. The absence of feeling like you're going to get something and I'm not, like that whole competition thing, like
there's not enough
scarcity. So there's unlimited resources in that root chakra, as there are in the earth. I mean, just the abundance of earth energy and what's here for us to enjoy is all, you know, a capacity of that root chakra.
Mm-hmm.
So when I teach the root chakra, I teach a workshop, and we go one by one. And when I teach the root chakra, I go very slowly and very carefully. And we bring pictures in of the baby. Everybody brings their inner child. And it's usually deep, deep, deep work. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was about to say I can imagine, but I don't have to imagine, because I am doing some of that work with you. And I have definitely experienced these flashes, right? And I actually would not even say they're flashes. They're more like elongated periods of complete peace. Yeah. To the point where I'm brought to tears of gratitude. And if I take an inventory of what's actually happening for me in my life in terms of, you know, triggers and people just act, and well, I have a very colorful family, but you know, people acting the way that they will act. And I'm like, gosh, normally I would be so triggered by that. Yeah. I have all these reasons, like real reasons, to be upset, mad, feel lonely, feel sad, feel angry. And I'm like, I don't feel any of those things. Right. Now, again, it's not every day and it's not all the time, because I'm human and this is a process, but it's something that I'm diving into with you. And that's why I've been so excited to have you on, because I'm just like, I want more. I just want to learn more. I want to just understand more. Wow.
Well, it's really about creating that secure attachment for the first time sometimes. Like, some of us never have it. And so you finally create it within yourself. And then you add the element of meditation, which is like my recipe for real health is regular meditation. You nurture both the your parental self, your higher wise self through your meditation, and you nurture your inner child. And so it's just a win-win-win. And so for me, it's like I knew before I started doing this work that meditation made me feel good. But then I'd get knocked out. Something would trigger a lower chakra, survival or power, or I'm not enough in the second chakra, something. And when I finally learned how to clear the lower chakras, my meditations are so fulfilling. I get the light all the way down, as you are. So I feel connected to source all the way to my inner baby. Like that's true, activation of the soul all the way in. It's getting to the core. And it takes time. It's, you're a quick study. For most people, it's like a year or two of really deep work. It's not to be rushed.
Not to be rushed. And also, I'm sure you agree, I'm sure it's not a process of arrival. Like, I don't necessarily believe in the idea that, well, we have reached self-mastery and we're done now, right? Like, we're good to go.
You raise it up and then you create from a different level.
Right. Yes. So good. And for me, I feel like, it's so interesting because meditation is always something, I've talked about this in my group, where I've been like, oh yeah, like I know it's good for me, but I haven't really fully embraced it, even though like my intuition, like not the ego chitta voice in my head, but my intuition always said, Sarah, this is the way. And I would say, okay, great, but just not right now. And now that I'm really leaning into it, and again, it's not 100%, maybe it's like 70% of the time, because I'm practicing integrating this new way, right?
Yeah.
That it has been so fantastic and so lovely. And I actually did a post on my group the other day, and it brought up some really interesting conversation around this idea of self-love, because what I have been learning from this is self-love through the reparenting of this little baby Sarah that really, as I'll just be transparent with the people in my group, like never was really truly taken care of. And I love, this is like totally like a therapy session that's going to be like in my group, and it's totally cool. That I started to really feel this intense self-love, and the idea that that it's an inside job, right? That it doesn't matter what everything looks like on the outside, or how I say, everything looked so great on paper for so long, or any fulfilling relationships. Doesn't mean you can't have fulfilling relationships. Doesn't mean you can't receive love and experience great joy. But at this really, really deep core primal level, the idea of really loving yourself first it kind of blew the doors off of things, because it was a concept for me that I was like, well, yeah, of course I love myself. Who doesn't love themselves, right? I didn't understand until I understood.
Well, until you really experienced, you had the experience of it, and the energetic connection and the alignment, the heart aligned with that root and the second and third. So, I like to describe the inner baby for all of us as your little starseed. I mean, you're the closest to God or source, however you want to define spirit.
Yeah.
When you first come in, wherever you believe you came from, whatever your belief system, you came from somewhere, and you're not just a physical form, but you're this little being coming into a body. And depending on how you land and how you're welcomed and how you're nurtured in those first few months, really depends on how then we relate to that very pure divine part of ourselves. So so we get this opportunity to reparent, and it's like falling in love with our own divinity and our purity and our innocence, all in that, all at once. So it is magical. And I also feel from my own experience and my observation of clients that it's also the seed of our creativity. It's like, oh, my life purpose just bloomed inside of me. And then suddenly, like having a relationship is lovely, but it's not like I need a relationship, or I need that money, or I need that car. It's like, that's a nice addition to what's already happening here. It's like I'm already full, and this adds to it, or is a nice reflection of how I feel about myself.
Yes. And it's so amazing. And I hope this is just me, but if I hadn't experienced like firsthand, or am experiencing or learning the things that you're talking about firsthand, I would be listening to you and I'd be like, this sounds so awesome. I like don't, it's not that I don't, I think I would be like, I don't get it, or I don't believe it, or I just, there's something about like, it's not downloadable until you try it on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just maybe the way that my brain works. You know what I mean?
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know.
that's the way the rational mind works. And so a big part of working with the full system. So we talk about this in my world of healers. We talk about this whole system as a unified field of consciousness.
Okay.
So when we are analyzing and questioning, we're more coming just from the mental body, which actually is coming from a root chakra that's has a little bit of fear in it. So the mental body we like to think is so up high, but really the rational mind is more about keeping us safe, and it's right in the survival fear. So when we can experience meditation or experience a delicious massage or a release of energy, it bypasses the rational mind and helps us to drop into the higher mind and the heart. And that's what you're talking about in meditation. It's like, whoa, something just lined up and this feels right, and is a yes in my whole system.
Mm-hmm.
And so for someone who's listening to this and like, God, this all sounds really great, you know, there are some resources that I think are just old, tried and true, or The Homecoming by John Bradshaw is
Yes.
a book about, inner child work. And I think Claudia Black wrote a book years ago called It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood. So beginning to just have some kind of sense of there's parts of us that are still developing, and that they are part of, they play into our relationships, whether we're conscious of it or not. They play into our health. They play into our choices and our decision making. So the more we can become aware of our story, and where there may be some wounding, and how we want to approach that slowly, with love. And when I first started doing, I did a big portion of this work in my 20s, so like 30 years ago. And when I first started doing it, I did it with art therapy and body-mind work, body-mind centering work with Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. And my first work with the art was like my little child was just covered with a lot of just dark energy and cords, and I had to clear her out before she could even communicate to me. And it took a long time. It took probably a year or two to get comfortable with the whole idea. So it's not just to dive in and expect, miracles, but it can be transformative.
So two quick things. One is, it's not lost on me. So let's totally jump out of the energetics and the ethereal and how, we're going to love ourselves. You look amazing. So the mind, spirit, body connection, I have noticed also that as I've been doing this work, people are like, you're glowing. Like, you just look fantastic. My skin's cleared up. Like, I'm not wearing any makeup, right? I'm like, talk about that for a second. And then I also would love if you have any suggestions for people that are just starting out, like how could they play and experience their own chakra system, or kind of get keyed into what that looks like for them, maybe without, reading a book or whatever.
Big risk or investment. Yeah. So, well, thank you. And I did notice that you looked amazing. You looked so much younger. I'm like, is that Sarah? When I haven't seen you in a week. You look great.
Awesome.
So absolutely, this is the fountain of youth. When you start spinning the chakras and moving energy, there are all kinds of light activations that go on, especially once you start working with the third eye and everything. And I work with a teacher, Joan Walker, and I'm not sure how old she is, but I bet she's in her 80s, and she looks the same way. She is like just flawless. She's just been downloading this light for so long, and she channels. So when you channel, you bring in, really powerful, high vibration, through your body all the time. So I think that's a big part of it. And I also feel like when you're not running the adrenal fight or flight all the time, you're actually bringing in those hormones that bring in, more of the serotonin, more of the melatonin, more of the dopamine, the things that really balance the brain, balance the hormones.
That makes so much sense.
It's really basic chemistry. And so what I would say to people that are interested in like, gosh, I just want to learn a little bit more. On my website, there's a page called Tools for Empowerment. There's a book on there called The Wisdom of the Chakras. And it's a very basic intro by one of my teachers. And then there are, I have about 6 guided imagery meditations on there that have to do with building a container. And oftentimes people feel like they just are permeable to all kinds of energy. So there are 2 meditations on there that are about holding the container. And then there's a chakra clearing meditation. So it teaches how to do that for yourself and see if you get some relief. And I would say play with that, because there's no harm in just bringing some energy and visualization to the chakra system and getting to know what your body is feeling in those areas, and getting familiar with, oh, my baby is in my root. Okay, like getting a feel for your sits bones. And then, oh, my 2-year-old really wants to color today, or wants to dance, or like, what do I want to express from my second chakra? And my school-age child wants to be powerful today and wants to assert herself and communicate. And so, just playing with that is a suggestion. And there's a ton of stuff on the internet too.
Right.
So getting a sense of, most of the stuff I see out there is pretty good. It doesn't look like it's a little bit repetitive, but that helps us to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm thinking specifically about the diamond shield meditation, and I'm not remembering how long it is. It's maybe like 20 minutes, but maybe even if you're someone that's curious about this, I mean, I think for me, what was so important was really starting to believe it, because I'm not going to do anything unless I believe it's true. I'm not going to just do something on blind faith. And I think that's how most people are, right? So I think for me, the first step was really getting in touch with, when I meditate, and for me, that was yoga for a long time, still is. But when I'm really focused and sitting down and doing like a diamond shield meditation, I recognize that I can feel my energy shifting inside of my body.
It's the feeling is what makes you believe. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that could be like a doorway into, and then you kind of build on some of those other concepts.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I do a weekly meditation live.
Yes.
And it's called Stay Attuned. And it's $25 for a whole month. So it breaks down to about $6 a meditation. And I was guided I was going to make it free. And then my guide said, no, people need to feel like they're getting something. But basically it's every Sunday night.
You need to get paid for your amazing gifts and talents, you guys. This stuff is really, really amazing.
Well, it's stuff I've compiled over years. It's like a synthesis of, and my particular flavor. There's other people doing this, but out there, but it's my particular, flavor. And so, every Sunday night at 7:00, it's called Stay Attuned. And I'll take you through a clearing. We do clearing. We do usually some kind of light activation, whether it's a visual image of a sacred geometric form through the chakras, a color. I do, teach breath work, and then you get the recording. So I think you've done a couple, and they've been pretty powerful this last few weeks. And I think this week will be more of an integrative one. But, and I don't want to plug myself. There's a lot of cool stuff out there too. Like, besides, just doing the meditation, there's a couple of apps out there, Chakra Pro and Chakra Tuner I have on my phone, and you can it talks you through the different chakras and what, the chakras also attuned to the key of C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So this particular app sounds those tones, and they both are apps you can just run on your phone, and it's mostly based on sound and guided imagery.
Ooh,
yeah,
I love that. So I can listen to it while I'm in the car. It's hard to meditate in the car. I've tried it, but
yeah. Use it also for clearing the room. Apparently, the sound helps to clear the energy.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you
Yeah,
taking
thank
time out of your,
you.
because I know that you are so busy, and I just really,
And
really
I love talking
appreciate.
about this stuff, as you can tell.
I
So,
can, I
the more
can.
people I can reach, the better. And, I'm always open to just a conversation on the phone too, or, if people want to reach out and ask me questions or text me or whatever, that's all on my website too, if they just have questions. So.
Okay, great.